Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Godzilla podcast. All right, one more bit of news today for the Godzilla world. It seems like all this news seems to come in spurts. There's a huge dry spell, and then all of a sudden they all come together within a few days, like these bits of news. So it's good to see that the pattern is repeating itself here. This one, though, is the biggest news of all for today, and it has to do with the fact, and this is pretty fresh, just reported today. So here's what it is. It has to do with the fact that as everyone's fan dream come true, apparently there is active work going on right now to have a Godzilla versus King Kong film. Yes, exactly like the one that came out all those years back, the one that you and we all loved seeing, especially as kids. Apparently now motions are being done in place to ensure that sometime in the future there will be a King Kong versus Godzilla film. And here's how it's happening. It's a little bit confusing because I'm confused on this myself, considering the number of things that have been traded. But here's what we know so far, and all of it is still pretty preliminary, but all of this is as official as it gets. So you have Legendary Pictures, which of course brought on forth Godzilla thanks to their partnering with Toho Studios. They ended up making the Godzilla 2014 film together along with Warner Brothers. But then shortly after the film came out, or I think it was actually sometime even before, that's when Legendary decided that they wanted to go ahead and move their partnership from Warner Brothers to Universal Studios. From what I recall, the news was that Legendary wanted more control over things. Warner Brothers wasn't exactly giving up that control altogether. Universal was in a position where they were more than happy to take Legendary as a partner. So they moved over, and still, and this is a little bit confusing, but from what I understand, whenever Legendary left, they took with them Pacific Rim, but I believe they left Godzilla with Warner Brothers, because to this day Warner Brothers is still making the Godzilla 2, the Godzilla 2018 film. But Legendary decided they'll take Pacific Rim, and then at the same time they're going to work on new properties with Universal Studios, such as the recently released and hugely successful Jurassic World, and then other upcoming features too, including this one, the King Kong film. That was the film that Legendary was most interested in doing as one of the earliest things they would work on, and it's that Skull Island film that's very close to being shot. It'll be shot sometime later on this year, and then it'll be released sometime soon thereafter. Now, as far as how this ties in, and this is where it gets further confusing, remember, Legendary is now with Universal. They left Godzilla with Warner Brothers, but now Legendary has decided, you know what? I want, especially the guy Toll, he's decided he wants to have a monster mashup. He wants to have the fan dream come true yet again of having a Godzilla versus King Kong film. And the way Deadline is reporting it, because they're the ones that are breaking this news, and I've included the link for it below, so check it out when you have a chance. The way Deadline is reporting it, the way this will make it easier, because previously I had mentioned that a King Kong versus Godzilla film is really far stretch because of so many properties tied together. You have Universal, you have Warner Brothers, you have Toho Studios, and then presumably you would have Legendary Pictures. So many rights have to come into one place together in order to ensure it gets off on the same hand. Now it looks like Toll has decided, you know what, that is correct. And so, and this is further confusing, he has decided to move Skull Island from Universal back to Warner Brothers. Apparently Legendary Pictures will still be with Universal Studios, but they're making this Skull Island now with Warner Brothers. They're back at home base, in other words, to ensure that the future film that they're planning, the Godzilla vs. King Kong film, will be made in a much easier process. Everything will be together under one studio as opposed to the mishmash of things happening as is right now. So that's, if you're confused as I am, that's apparently what's happening. Legendary started it off with Warner Brothers. They moved to Universal. Warner Brothers kept Godzilla. Legendary left with Pacific Rim. Legendary started to make Skull Island with Universal. Now Legendary wants to make the mashup of the Godzilla King Kong film, and so they've brought themselves back to Warner Brothers to ensure this gets done. This is all pretty preliminary stuff, but it seems to be pretty official. Now, as to when this movie would come out, this is far off on the horizon still, because first you're going to have Skull Island come out in 2017, I believe, and then you're going to have the Godzilla sequel finally come out in 2018. So presumably this film is supposed to come out sometime after that, either 2019 or more likely 2020, somewhere around there. So you're looking at least 4 to 5 years until this thing is out there. And that's a long ways from now. A lot of things can happen between then, but that is a long ways. And then all of a sudden, this makes the news as to the delay of Pacific Rim seem much more reasonable, because of the three properties. We're talking about King Kong, we're talking about Godzilla, and we're talking about Pacific Rim. Of those three properties, all involving giant monsters, only two have certain box office success, and that's of course Godzilla and King Kong. Pacific Rim is the only one that seems to have an iffy chance. It didn't make that much money here in the US the first go around. The only thing that saved it was the international market, and even then that took a while to build up. So the sequel itself is sketchy. So of the three properties, I can see now why the news for Pacific Rim being delayed might be due to this, because Legendary Pictures would rather work on this film, on the Skull Island film, followed by the sequel, presumably the Godzilla vs. King Kong sequel, than maybe the Pacific Rim film, which would now be in some kind of weird area, almost like a third wheel of sorts, because it was also presumably supposed to come out sometime in 2017, but now, when is it going to happen? Is it 2017, 2018, 2019? We still don't know just yet. So, crazy world, huh? It's strange how a couple of years these things work out, how one studio leaves for another, one property leaves, then they come back, the studio does, and then all of a sudden the craziest idea of all, that there would be a long shot of a Godzilla vs. King Kong film, is now much more closer to fruition. So what do you guys think about this news? Again, check out the link when you have a chance. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on this. So, and obviously the biggest question that people are asking right now is, how can you have a King Kong versus Godzilla film when they are completely different sizes? I mean, Godzilla dwarfs. I don't even think King Kong comes up, I mean, at least the current Godzilla, the size of the current Godzilla, I don't even think King Kong comes up to the knee level. So how they're going to explain something involving a Godzilla versus King Kong mishmash, or like a fight without having a size difference, who knows? Because the only way to do that is Godzilla's going to stay the same size. He's not going to shrink, and there's probably not going to be another different Godzilla altogether. That'll just confuse things even further. So most likely it'll be King Kong himself that'll be supersized, which will be a quite different thing than any of the other previous films within any of the King Kong franchise. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.